Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and welcome to some NFL predictions. I made a prediction last week of how the whole season is going. I know I didn't have predictions down for week one, but we are here with week two predictions, and we are going to take a look at these games using some of our understanding that we saw in week one, and hopefully then make some good decisions and see what's going to happen in week two. The app that I'm using or the website that I'm using actually sorts it by conference, so I'm not necessarily going to be going in order of how they're playing, but we're going to start with the AFC, move to the interconference games, and then finish off with the NFC. So, our first matchup is a big matchup, a divisional matchup between Buffalo and Miami. Both of these teams fought hard for the division championship, and Buffalo did well to become NFC East champions. As we look at week one, both of them are coming in here at 1-0. Miami had a hard fought win against Jacksonville, and the Bills had to come back against the Arizona Cardinals to get their first win on the board. So, with both of these teams playing Thursday night, it's going to be interesting to see how each of them play. My concern initially, and Josh Allen is a very good quarterback, but I feel like Buffalo is a team that kind of pours on late throughout the season and maybe has some hiccups early in the season. Certainly that was the case last year, where then Miami maybe playing a more competitive and looking a little bit cleaner against Jacksonville might have the slight edge here. Vegas says that they have a 2.5 point favorites. And I think just for this one, it is going to be a close game and very interesting to see how this unfolds in the NFC East. But I think I am going to pick Miami here to get the victory. I think later on in the season, when it's switched and Buffalo's at home, I think Buffalo will win and they'll split the series. But for this week coming up, I think it's the Miami Dolphins. Next, we've got the New York Jets up against the Tennessee Titans. The Jets played on Monday night, losing to the 49ers, and the Titans losing to Chicago on Sunday as well. So 0-1 teams. When I take a look, I understand that there's high expectations that if Rodgers is healthy, the Jets are going to do well. And some people and pundits have been saying, oh, well, I don't know. Now there's lots of questions because they lost really poorly to San Francisco. My perspective is they can still be a solid team and have some high hopes. This is also a franchise that has not been to the playoffs in a long time. I think it's 2016, maybe 2014 or something was the last time that they were in the playoffs. So we really need to recognize where this team is at and noticing, okay, this is the next step is getting into the playoffs, right? And now would then be a progression forward, right? That this isn't a team, I don't think, that's built to go all the way to the Super Bowl. Maybe if things get hot and things work out, then that, once you're in the playoffs, right, anything can happen. But the goal for this team is to get into the playoffs. And I think they're a solid enough team that, coming up against the Super Bowl runner-ups is a hard first game. Where then Tennessee, my concern is that, where are they going to get their wins? If they can't beat a rookie quarterback that doesn't have, isn't hitting all of their throws and then eventually gives the game away on a pick six, I think Tennessee is going to struggle, and I think this is going to be more of that struggle. And so I am having the Jets going in on Sunday and beating the Titans. Next up is another big game. And maybe it doesn't seem like that as a big game, but when I look at the playoff picture, I see the Browns and the Jaguars in that position where they're fighting for a playoff spot and probably are not going to be in a position to get the division title. So where are they going to fall, right? Deshaun Watson did not look good against the Cowboys, although the Cowboys' defense looks really tough and might be tough throughout the year. And the Jaguars just missed out on a win against Miami if Etienne doesn't fumble the ball as he's going to the end zone. So, two two teams where then you might look at this and say, is this a must win? And I know that that's a cliche and we're looking at week 2, but when you go to tiebreakers at the end of the year, it's games like this that are going to matter. And so for me, I think for how close Jacksonville was to beating Miami in that opening game, I think maybe they have a little bit of the momentum riding in their favor. I think there's still things that Cleveland needs to figure out and Deshaun Watson needs to figure out on the offensive end to make sure that they can be successful. And I know that this is, close. Vegas gives Jacksonville a 3-point edge, and I am going to go with that 3-point edge and say that Jacksonville is going to get the win here. Next up, we've got the Vegas Raiders up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now you see here the little tag, and I like this as a little image here. So they're coming off a mini bye because it'll be 10 days or so that Baltimore has played, so they might have a little bit more rest. But I don't really think that would make a difference here. I think Baltimore are a much better team, right? When you play the Chiefs as hard as you did, and like most people, when you look at that first game, you're like, wow, this is a great start to the season. And then you look at many of the games on Sunday and say, oh, a lot of these teams have rust. Where then Baltimore and Kansas City did not look that. They looked like they were playing a playoff game. That's how much that opening game meant to them. And so I think Baltimore is in good form, even though there's talks about, their offensive line, there's concerns there. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be winning most of their games throughout the year and be ready for playoff time again. And I do think the Raiders, even though I like Gardner Minshew, and he did well with the Colts last year of almost pushing them into the playoffs, I think Vegas is going to struggle. They are going to have some tough games where, they're going to be happy if they could pull out a win, and it would be a big surprise, but that's not going to happen here. And so I do have the Ravens winning here. Next up, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos. Now, when I did my season predictions, probably the one of the two teams that I feel like I underestimated the most was the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their defense is really solid. Their offense is where there's always going to be question marks. But I think their defense is going to be good enough that they can win games just on their defense and could win more games than we expect that way. Now, one thing to note is that maybe Russell Wilson comes in next week and he's able to do better things offensively than Justin Fields, but you still get a win against Atlanta without that. Denver, okay, Bo Nix, again, I think there's good things there, but it's still a rookie quarterback. There are still things he's going to have to learn. I think a lot of their play calling is going to things that he's comfortable with, which then might mean that they're not really very creative in the offensive side at this point. And so I do think Pittsburgh's going to come in, impose their presence defensively, and get a solid win here. So I see Pittsburgh getting the win. Next up, again, a big, tough matchup here. We've got the Bengals up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And when we would look at a game like this previously, you'd think, well, this is a big matchup. And it is. But when you see the Bengals come off that loss against New England, now you're starting to be concerned for what the Bengals are able to do. You start 0-2, and maybe your position within the division, you're making it an uphill climb for yourself. Where then the Kansas City Chiefs looked very good on Thursday night, beating Baltimore, and again, look poised to try to make it 3 Super Bowl wins in a row. So in this case, and especially with that additional time of rest, I do think the Chiefs are going to be victorious here. Next, we have our interconference games. The other team that I feel like I might have underestimated in my season picks would be the Indianapolis Colts. I think their defense is solid, and if Anthony Richardson can make the plays that he did last week, he came close and made sure that Houston had to work for that win. And I think that will give them opportunities to make plays further on and get wins against teams. Green Bay, of course, losing Jordan Love for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, could be more than that. We'll kind of wait and see. If they're going ahead with Malik Willis, again, he's going to have some time to bed in and play with the first team offense. But again, it is certainly a step down at the quarterback position. And so with that in mind, with kind of the upward trajectory of the Colts and the kind of the pullback from the Packers, I do see the Colts coming away with this as a win to get their first win on the board. Next, we have the Chargers against the Panthers. The Chargers did decently well, right, getting the win against the Vegas Raiders. But it's Carolina is the story here, that how poorly they played against the New Orleans Saints. That looked like one of those week 1 or week 0 games in college football where, they're getting prepared to lose 50-0 or 50-7, right? That did not look good, both defensively or offensively. And it's against a team that of the New Orleans Saints that are not necessarily expected to do a whole lot of big things throughout the year. And so when I see that, Carolina's got to figure some things out, or it's going to be a very rough year. And I think Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers, I think, will be able to capitalize on the weaknesses that the Panthers have, and the Chargers are going to come away with a second win of the year. The next one here is Seattle and New England. Now, initially, if I looked at this before the season, I would think, yeah, you know what? I think Seattle's probably got this one. However, with how well New England played against Cincinnati, you start to question, okay, Jacoby Brissett can do well to kind of at least not give away turnovers, which I think is the big thing there, and manage their way down the field, use a lot of their running game, and then defensively did decently well to stop Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So when I take a look at that in comparison, you now have a home game against a team that's traveling across the country to play you in Seattle, and Seattle did decently well, getting a win against Denver, but again, Denver is a team in progress. They're not a team that's going to necessarily win all of the games either. So this is probably, again, the first surprise that I'm picking, but I'm going with the Patriots to get their second win on the board and actually start 2-0, which, again, when you look at that on paper, that was certainly unexpected. Okay, but I do see them getting their second win, kind of flying high after their win last week. Then we've got a primetime game Sunday night, again with the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams up against C.J. Stroud and the Texans. Again, two young quarterbacks kind of up against each other. C.J. Stroud being the story last year as a rookie quarterback making the playoffs. Caleb Williams getting all that fanfare of potentially being the next person to do that. However, it wasn't as pretty for Caleb Williams to end up getting their win. They did get a win, which when you look at many of the stats around rookie quarterbacks starting week 1, that's very rare. However, the circumstances around Tennessee giving that win to the Bears is very different. Houston, on the other hand, had a tough opponent with the Colts and went back and forth, but did able to pull away the win there. And I think it's still going to be a little bit of a learning curve for Caleb Williams. I think eventually he's going to, find at least some pattern and be reasonably well, but we can't expect that rookie quarterbacks all the time are going to just jump into the league, get into the playoffs, and perform at a high level right away. That is the anomaly. That's not the norm. So with that in mind, I'm going to go with the Texans. Let's then take a look at the NFC matchups. We have the 49ers who played on Monday night up against the Vikings. So two teams that are 1-0, and Sam Darnold looked decent with the Minnesota Vikings. However, you may end up looking decent anyway when you're playing the New York Giants. On the other side, the 49ers did well even without Christian McCaffrey, to establish a good running game and defeat the New York Jets. I think they're one of the top teams to beat in the NFC, and I think that they can come into a Minnesota game, put more pressure on Sam Darnold than what the Giants were able to do, and get the victory here. Then we have the New Orleans Saints against the Dallas Cowboys, two teams again with 1-0 records. Although New Orleans did very well offensively, good day for Derek Carr against the Carolina Panthers, where then Dallas Cowboys had a pretty solid outing against the Cleveland Browns. The difference here is I think that the caliber has jumped up for the Saints on who their opponent is. The defense of the Cowboys is going to put a lot more pressure on Derek Carr and make things difficult. And I think Dak Prescott is going to then be able to push offensively a lot harder than Bryce Young can at Carolina. So I don't see that the Saints are really going to really challenge in the same way and put up as many points as they did. I'm going to see the Cowboys out for a second victory of their season. Then we've got the divisional matchup, New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders. Giants losing out to the Vikings, where then the Commanders losing out to Tampa Bay. What I saw there is, the Commanders, I think out of the rookie quarterbacks, from my perspective, Jayden Daniels actually looked the best. Or at least for the perspective that they got a lot of reasonable yardage. They got time in the end zone, which not all rookie quarterbacks could say they did, right? And we're able to then make some plays, okay? The Giants, again, concerning when you have Sam Darnold and the Vikings kind of fairly handily take care of you. The other thing to keep in mind, and I think there's a lot of inner struggle around this, that there was an announcement that, confirming, Daniel Jones will be the starter for week 2. I don't think that was anything that we needed to know. Like, we assumed that. But if there's already that inner circling that there needs to be a quarterback change, or there needs to be change that happens, and maybe there's disruption in the locker room that we don't know about, like, I'm concerned about what the Giants are going to be able to do this year. And so I think I'm going to take Jayden Daniels and for the Commanders to get their first win of the season. I'm really excited about the next matchup because it is a redo of a playoff matchup where we have Tampa Bay going to Detroit. Both teams getting a victory last game, right? It took till overtime for the Lions to get their victory, but 1-0 teams coming in. I think in this case it's going to be much the same as we saw. I think Tampa Bay is a decent team, and Baker Mayfield continues to do well there. I do think, though, they're just a little touch behind some of those top contenders, with Detroit being one of those that are seeking to continue to push forward. And so I do see Detroit getting their second win of the year, pushing forward and getting a victory on Sunday. Then we have the Rams facing the Cardinals, a divisional matchup here. Matt Stafford did well to come back, and the Rams did well to come back against Detroit. And the Cardinals did very well until Josh Allen made a good push to get their victory. So 0-1 teams that are coming up against each other. It's almost even for Vegas odds. They're actually giving Arizona the favorite here. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Buffalo generally is a team that starts slow and maybe doesn't start as crisp, where then if the Rams can take the momentum from the second half and use that to go into this game, I think the Rams can take the victory here. Last, we've got the Falcons on Monday night going to Philadelphia, the Battle of the Birds here. And so what we see here is the Falcons losing out to Pittsburgh. and the Eagles getting that close win against Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Again, I see this as the Falcons. Hopefully they have a little bit more success, right? There might be some questions about if they keep losing games. When is that top 10 quarterback draft pick going to get a chance to start and maybe make their emphasis on the game, or is it going to be Kirk Cousins that has that role throughout the year? Maybe I'm looking into that too much, but I do see this as a tough battle. The Eagles are a strong team, right? Taking down Green Bay, and they're going to be up and around it throughout the entire year. So I do see the Eagles then getting their second win of the season and continuing forward with that. So those are my predictions. You're welcome to agree or disagree in the comments below, but if you disagree, try to put your own predictions down there and we can discuss that. Hopefully you enjoy this weekend and all the games that are lined up, and we will see you again next time. Bye for now.